It's now time for What's Up Asheville, sponsored by the city of Asheville, with the host, Mr. Sam Parada, and here he is.
Good afternoon, Asheville, and welcome to What's Up Asheville at WRES Radio 100.7 FM, a radio show discussing projects and initiatives at the city of Asheville. I am your host, as per usual, Sam Parada, Communication and Public Engagement Specialist with the city. And today I have the privilege to get another Sustainability Department employee, so that makes up all of them. And her name is Kiera Bulan. I hope I pronounced your last name right. How are you?
I am well today, thank you.
I'm so happy that you're here to talk about some very, very important things about climate justice, food scraps, and a bunch of other stuff that I'm sure we'll get to at some point. But before we get started, why don't you tell me more about yourself? What do you do for the city?
Sure. I am the Sustainability Program Manager, so I have been working with the city of Asheville for a little over 2.5 years. And I came to the city from decades in the nonprofit sector, working with food systems and farmers and community organizing. And so I bring that passion and that interest to my work at the city in the Department of Sustainability. And I work with some of our community partners on community-facing programs and within our internal team on implementation of climate justice and other sustainability initiatives.
Very important stuff, especially, as we almost got hit by the hurricane last weekend. I'm happy that we didn't get hit by it, but you're working on very specific stuff that could potentially help the lower income households and just make it safer to live in Nashville. So why don't we start with that, since it's such a big topic?
Sure. Well, we understand that climate change is happening already. It's underway. And while we're privileged to live in a community that has some safeguards against that, it's also real here. We are not facing sea level rise because we're not a coastal community. And so sometimes it feels a little bit further afield for us here in the mountains. And also we understand that there's nuisance flooding, that there's other climate-related stressors, heat, water quality, other environmental and climate-related stressors. And so our Climate Justice Initiative seeks to share information that we do have through our climate resilience assessment that we did as a city in 2018, to share that information out to our community, and also to lean in deeply to the best practices and knowledge that already exists in our community, in safety nets, in social networks, in ways that we at the city can learn from communities and community-embedded knowledge about how can we activate those safety nets, how can we be more prepared to be more resilient in the time of acute disruption. If there is another tropical storm that comes through, like Fred, if we're experiencing other climate-adjacent crises, health emergencies, we know that our resilience serves us in a number of different ways. So our Climate Justice Initiative is a way to share information that we have out to communities to help people be more prepared and more familiar with climate threats as they evolve, and also for us to continue to learn from our community about ways that we can work together and collaborate on best practices.
And this is an actively going process. I assume it's never going to end.
Correct. Yeah, we're always learning. We're always learning from the science and from the data. We're better understanding what our urban canopy looks like. We're better understanding what our vulnerabilities are in terms of climate. And we're also continuing to partner and build up our own knowledge, understanding, and leadership around collaborations for resilience building in community. And so to date, the Climate Justice Initiative has been underway for a couple years. City Council adopted a climate emergency resolution in 2020, and the Climate Justice Initiative formally was kind of built out of that. Now we know that informally there's been years of communities organizing themselves in response to disasters as they've come around. And so the city also has been preparing our own infrastructure and working in our own departments in cross-departmental ways to build up our own infrastructure and our own resilience. So we're trying to kind of marry those two initiatives together. So we did some community engagement, talked to some leaders within the community, hosted some story circles within our community to kind of hear from people and be able to kind of co-develop our own definitions and understanding of what climate experiences are right now in Asheville, and to be able to share the data that we have through our climate justice index out with communities and begin that narrative and that conversation. But yeah, it's ongoing for sure.
Yeah. And where can one find this information?
On the city's website. So the Climate Justice Initiative has a webpage on the sustainability section of the city's website. And there you can see the climate justice data map, which layers not only our climate threats, which we learned through our climate resilience assessment, but also we understand that climate threats exist within the context of all kinds of climate and non-climate stressors. So not only are we talking about flooding and wildfires and landslide risk, we're also talking about historically redlined communities. We're also talking about social vulnerability index, age, and demographics. And we know that there's an intersection of those compounding threats that really tell us more about communities' vulnerabilities. So it's not only are you in a place that's going to flood, but what kind of access do you have to emergency services? What are ways that people have access to resources and power, and how does that interact with each other in terms of overall vulnerability? So there's a map where you can kind of click on your address and learn more about some of those factors. And then there's also reports and information from our conversations with community to date. And finally, at this stage, we're also looking internally. So what we're doing within the city of Asheville is using some of that first round of engagement information, the themes and the topics that we're hearing from community, to be able to put our own programs and projects through a climate justice screening tool. So we're in the process of kind of applying that knowledge, that filter, that lens to our own initial projects at the beginning and planning and implementation phase, because we understand that climate justice is also about thinking about how we allocate resources, be they financial resources, planning resources, time, attention, the various resources that we have. And so we're asking ourselves internally with our project and program planning to think with a climate justice lens, to be able to better address climate justice initiatives throughout departments in the city.
Love it. So being more equitable and thinking about the bigger picture of what is Asheville.
Yep.
Fantastic. And how has this been received so far? Have you received positive responses from meetings and city?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, our colleagues within the city are without a doubt 100% interested in figuring out how to do it. Do we have the answers? Are we always doing it right? No. I mean, we don't know the answers to how to make the best impact. There's a way to approach a planning project that's very different from a way to approach an engagement project, and there's no one single answer. So really it's an iterative process where we're trying to make sure we're asking the right questions, and then being able to engage with our communications team, with our equity and inclusion team, because there's a lot of overlap and synergy. And if, as the organization is prioritizing equity, climate justice, sustainability across the organization, then we have to really be approaching our projects and programs with that complicated web, to be able to say, there's not a single answer, and there's not necessarily a linear path. To be able to be iterative and flexible and do the best that we can with the resources that we have, while holding open those questions and those priorities.
Yeah, with only the two of you working in the department right now, I feel like you got a big workload coming ahead.
Yeah, well, that's one of the opportunities that we have. And this is the way that the sustainability department is set up, is as a support entity within the city. We are not the implementers on very many programs. We do have some. We can talk about some of those.
Yeah.
But more often than not, we're providing expertise and collaboration within our departments. We collaborate with Public Works. We collaborate with the Stormwater Division, with the Water Division, with capital projects, and in order to be able to not only bring our personal expertise, but even more importantly, to be able to tap into our networks of collaborators, of other practitioners in sustainability in the region, to be able to bring that base of expertise to projects as they're being implemented.
Fantastic. And so, well, you heard it from Kiera. Go to the website and, find out about your neighborhood, your area, because, a hurricane, you can tell if it's coming, but, flooding, fires, things like that can happen very randomly, and it's better to be aware ahead of time than having to Google, who do I call now that the hurricane hit me and I don't have a roof in my house anymore. But on a more positive note, why don't we talk about food scraps?
Yay, food scraps!
Food scraps. I think it's a positive thing.
I think so too. It's all related. It's one big continuum.
Yes,
one of the
is.
ways, I love the food scraps drop-off program. So this is a relatively new pilot program. And one of the things, I'll talk about the details, but one of the things I really love about this program is that the idea of climate change can be overwhelming. Like, what can I possibly do that makes a difference? And so, feeling that climate anxiety can be very real on the individual, even on the household level. Like, that there's doom and gloom, and I'm going to try to bring my reusable bag, and I'm going to try to drive less and bike more, but it's hard to know, where are the opportunities for impact. And so composting, or creating less food waste, is a real tangible opportunity. So there's a number of statistics that back this up that I think are really exciting. And there's just so much food that is wasted in our society, nationally, globally. There's an enormous amount of food that is wasted. Here in Buncombe County, we estimate that 60,000 tons of food is wasted annually.
Oh, wow.
So much food. And for a family of 4, that's about $1,500 a year. Imagine that you go to the grocery store and you buy 4 bags of food, you just drop one in the parking lot. I
feel like I do that every time I go shopping. Yes.
Yeah, and so that's not just the food that's wasted and the food that's going to the landfill, and it's releasing greenhouse gas emissions, and it's also, as you go back the supply chain, we wasted that water, we wasted that human labor, we wasted that transportation cost, we wasted the time at the grocery store. I mean, across, it's compounding waste. And so it contributes to enormous amounts of money, and resources being wasted. And then also, that food is going to a landfill and rotting and,
Yeah.
And also, we have almost 13% food insecurity rates in our county. So there are hungry people that don't have enough food to eat. And there is food that is being wasted across the supply chain and then rotting in the landfill and producing greenhouse gas emissions. It's like a lose-lose-lose situation.
It's not a pretty picture at all.
Right. So to get back to the positive.
Yes.
Not only are there strategies that we can implement to create less food waste in the first place, and that's where we always start. The EPA has a food waste hierarchy. We understand reducing food waste in the first place is the number one most impactful thing to do. So shop with a grocery list, organize your refrigerator, plan your meals, waste less food. There's lots of ways we can do that.
I try all of that, and I'm so bad at it.
Make stock, use your freezer. So there's tons of resources. So the city of Asheville has been working on within a Southeastern Cities cohort through the Natural Resources Defense Council for the last couple years on this project called Food Matters. And we were selected as a participating city because of the interest that we have in supporting residents in doing better work in reducing food waste. And so we have partnered with other organizations in Buncombe County to support the Food Waste Solutions Western North Carolina, which is a network of practitioners, some food rescue organizations, to other practitioners in the area who are advocates for food waste reduction. And so they have a website. It's wncfoodwaste.org, and there's lots of tips and tricks on how to waste less food there. So it's a great resource for just keeping an eye on what's going on in your own kitchen.
Right.
And then on the other end of the spectrum, we know that even if you do your very best work, there's eggshells and banana peels and
oh my God, you just mentioned the 2 things I get yelled at in my house every day because I threw them in the garbage and not in the compost.
Oh my goodness.
Yep.
So
Yep.
you know that you can compost.
Yes, we have a little compost in our backyard.
You have a composter in your backyard.
Yes.
So there's resources on our website through Public Works and Sanitation Division. We have some composting resources that help people set up backyard composters. Super easy. It'll cost you about $15 in materials from a local hardware store. You can totally do it yourself, or you can buy a more contained unit. There's lots and lots of composting resources out there. And also, some people can't backyard compost. They live in apartments, multifamily housing, or they're renters, or they just don't want to. The ick factor is real for some people. Like, if backyard composting is not an option for you, we still want to provide ways to keep those organic wastes out of the landfill. And so that's where the food scrap drop-off pilot program came from. And this is a partnership with the county, and it was initiated through our Food Matters participation. And we now have 4 places where residents of Asheville or Buncombe County can come drop off their food scraps for free. And we have a contract with a hauler who will take those out and take them to their compost facility and turn them back into black gold and return that to the earth in people's gardens as garden nutrients.
Oh, that's great. And where are these drop-offs located?
Currently, there's one at the landfill, which is up in Alexander. There's one at Stevens Lee Rec Center here downtown. There's one at Murphy Oakley Recreation Center in the Oakley neighborhood. And there's one at the West Asheville Library.
And you just throw all your compost in a bag and send it?
There's a couple different ways you can do it. Some people have their own containers, like those kitty litter boxes that people can. That's a really good container. It has a nice tight-fitting lid, really washable plastic. Also, we're giving away free kitchen countertop totes. So when people register, we do ask folks to register for the program. So we're trying to keep tabs on what the interest looks like, where people live. So there's a short, very easy to complete registration form that you can also find by going to asheville.nc.gov/compost and register for that, and you'll get all the information on the sites and how you sign up. And when you do that, you'll also get some details on how to claim a kitchen countertop tote, which is, again, like super easy to wash. But you can also use compostable plastic bags if you never want to wash it. Just keep it clean, pull the compostable bag out, and drop it at the drop sites.
Got it. Love it. Yeah, I struggle a lot with actually working the compost bag in my backyard, so I leave that to other people. But I do my best to throw that banana peel in the little bag that we take out. So,
Sam, it's the very least you can do, because you already have a compost in your backyard.
Yeah,
like,
we do.
You can do it.
We do.
So yes, I mean that makes, and so back to my kind of original point about this is, it matters. Like, if we can keep this amount of organic matter out of our landfill, it has a tangible impact on our greenhouse gas emissions, on our supply, on the supply chain. First, we want to make less food waste, but having opportunities to return those nutrients back to the soil,
Yes.
to enhance our garden, to keep that out of the landfill makes a huge difference. So there's an opportunity for people to have that personal impact at home in a way that really actually does make a difference.
Yeah, and we're lucky enough to live in such a beautiful place, beautiful mountains, and it would be a shame to lose all of that. Slowly over time, or God forbid, a fire or something of the sorts, and then there's a slow progress back to what it was. And do your best. That's all I can tell myself. Anytime I grab that eggshell and throw it in the garbage, I look at it and just give myself a little slap in the back of the neck and pick it back up, put it where it belongs.
It's the simple acts, and it's the accumulation of those multiple acts. And I think that relates to the Climate Justice Initiative and climate resilience preparedness and food scraps, is that it really takes a partnership. Like, there is a role and a responsibility that we have at the City of Asheville to provide infrastructure, to provide support, to share the data that we have, but it really depends on all of us as individuals, as residents, as a wider community and smaller neighborhoods within that community to understand the challenges and to work together to find locally appropriate solutions, be they compost, food scrap drop-off, community resilience. Like, when we think about the largest concept of resilience, what we really want to do is to maintain as high a quality of life for as many people as possible, so that when there are inevitable disruptions, be they COVID, be they Hurricane Fred, be they anything else that we can't even anticipate at this moment, that we dip less far down, like it's not as bad, and we're able to recover to our quality of life as soon as possible. We know that involves infrastructure. We know that involves connection and community. We know that involves, more than anything else, a social safety net. We know where to go when we need help. And that is something that really just comes through conversation, through connectedness, and through opportunities to work on shared projects together.
And engagement, you have to take that step.
Yep.
You have to start caring if you don't care already. And it's not easy to get started, but once you do and you start noticing the impacts, then it becomes a very positive feeling of you're doing something.
Yeah, and there's so many entree points. Like, this is what I like about what motivates me personally about sustainability or about food system work, is that it's not monolithic. You can really care about trees, or you can really care about air quality, or you can just really care about your neighbor, and it's all connected. And it all matters in terms of improving our quality of life and preserving the land and ecosystem that we rely on for that quality of life. And so come as you are and enter in the pathway that motivates you or moves you to take action. Yeah.
Well, what actually got us into composting was, first of all, the house we moved into had it, so that was a +1. So we were lucky enough. But then, we got into houseplants, and then from that point on, after running out of livable room to put the plants in, it's like, okay, well, let's grab this tiny patch of backyard that we have, and let's grow some carrots and potatoes and whatever we could. We had some really nice tomatoes over the summer, but now we're having carrots, and we finally took them out, and they're about an inch long. Super sad.
There's a lot of clay here.
Yes.
But,
it is that little hobby that got us into it, got us moving, and even though the fruits are not, sustainable to live off, it's nice that I had a tiny bite of a tiny carrot that I grew myself.
Sometimes the best impact of trying to grow your own food is that respect that one can get for a farmer and our larger community of food producers.
Yes.
Who are doing it on a scale that is feeding our community.
Immense, yes.
Yeah.
And let's just be grateful that I'm not a farmer, because the carrots would be very, very hungry.
Keep trying.
One day.
Never give up.
But speaking about food, unless you want to say anything else about the scraps.
No.
All right.
Always, and also no.
We have a little bit of time to talk about Food Policy Action Plan, if you want to jump into that.
Sure, yeah. I think some of our most impactful work, the Sustainability Department is a team of 2, and I talked a little bit about kind of how we collaborate and support the departments within the city. Some of our activities, or some of the resolutions and goals that we work within, are also community-facing initiatives, and the Food Policy Action Plan is one of those examples. And so we work to address the goals within the Food Policy Action Plan by partnering with our community members and organizations that are working in community doing that work. So similar to your garden, there's a number of community gardens around Asheville, some of which are on city property, and we work through a contract with Bountiful Cities to support gardeners in identifying new areas where they might want to grow food, and working with Parks and Rec often to kind of establish that community garden in that space, to support people with resources, workshops, online presence that Bountiful Cities manages through the Community Garden Network, to be able to grow more food in the city, to be able to grow food on public land, to be able to think about some of our public lands as places where we can have food for the commons. It's not necessarily going to feed all of our city, but it serves an important educational opportunity where we can understand our landscape as also the provider of some of our sustenance And so we have edible plantings in some of our parks that are maintained in partnership with Bountiful Cities, and we have community gardens in some of our parks and public spaces. And then we have an edibles map where people can kind of look around and see where are the service berries, what's ripe now, what do I even do with that kind of fruit. So it's just sort of elevating the conversation around where food is available locally and how people can tap into growing their own food.
So I can go grow something and then just eat it.
Correct.
Fantastic.
Yes, exactly right. Yeah. So that's kind of one. And then we work with Asheville Greenworks on native pollinators and some with our waste reduction goal and in supporting communities and getting out and doing litter cleanups and kind of education around composting and leaf collection. And
Yeah, I was going to ask, does the compost program, does that ever go into use at these locations?
Yeah, good question. So the way that our current pilot program is set up, it's closed loop in that the compost doesn't go back to the landfill, but it is set up to go to Danny's Dumpsters, who's our partner. And they have a commercial composting setup, and they sell that back. So some individual gardeners will buy compost for their own garden or farmers, and they work with some of the other retailers in the area and adding that compost back. We do not have a system where it directly comes back into the community gardens, but it is staying within our community.
That's good. That's good to know.
Mm-hmm.
So, recycle.
Absolutely.
But at a more fruity level.
Exactly.
Fruits, vegetables. So while we're talking here, I know you can find this information online, but why don't you give me some more examples of foods that you can compost and foods that you should not be composting?
That's a great question because there's actually a different list, and it can be sometimes confusing for people. When you're doing backyard composting, there's a longer list of things that should not go into your backyard composter because your backyard compost system is not going to get as hot.
Okay.
It's not as big of a system. It's not being as carefully managed as a commercial system. So we recommend not putting in any fats, bones, meats, cheese, oil, none of the compostable plastics or even compostable paper materials can sometimes take a really long time to compost back there. But in the food scrap drop-off, you can bring all kinds of stuff.
All kinds of food.
It gets much hotter, and there's a whole list online. So, yeah,
Okay.
It depends where you're taking your foods.
Yeah, I've seen people in my house throwing like pasta water, like after boiling that. That's okay.
Oh, yeah.
Fish, stuff
Yep.
like that. Not the whole fish, but like fishy water.
Yeah, I think people, it kind of depends on the activity level in your backyard of other creatures. So the more that your compost smells like animal products, the more it may attract animals to your compost.
Okay.
And
so we don't want bears.
You do not
so-
want bears. You probably don't even want rats or maybe even possums or other
No.
things. So but it's there's a little bit that's about kind of your own setup in your own backyard.
Yep.
But it won't get warm enough. It won't get hot enough in the backyard compost systems to decompose some of the more complex bones and fats and those kinds
Got
of
it.
things. And compostable plastics, but we can accept those things at the food scrap drop-off. So you may be a household that does both. You're gonna, keep your turkey carcass and bring it to the food scrap drop-off program, but you're gonna keep your lettuce scraps in your backyard.
Right. Well, thank you so much for coming today and telling me all about climate justice and the food scraps and just everything that the city is doing to stay green.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. And well, that's it for today. For What's Up Asheville, thank you so much for listening, and please don't forget to participate in the different projects that we have at the city because we are working for you. And please don't forget to sign up for things like Your Voice, Your Choice and the engagement tab we have in our website at asheville.nc.gov. We really want to hear from you. We want to be held accountable. We want to make sure that we're doing the right job, or we want to make sure that we're not doing what you expect us to do so we can make better choices in the future. And yeah, please come sign up, participate, tell us what you think. And yeah, we'll be back in hopefully 2 weeks if everything pans out right. And stay tuned, and we'll be back at WRES 100.7 FM. Take care of one another, Asheville.
You've been listening to What's Up Asheville, sponsored by the City of Asheville in collaboration with WRS 100.7 FM. This program will re-air every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 12:30. Thank you for listening.